Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Ryden. My wife and I live on a fairly busy street, so every day we see people out walking their dogs, and in their hands is a small plastic bag, which, when nature is called to their pets, gets filled by the dog walker. And it leads me to wonder who's walking whom and who's the boss in this relationship. Well, our guest today, RichardAAllen, has probably wondered that from time to time, and that speculation is evident in his novel Kobo, a most unusual tale of role reversal. Welcome, Richard, from Bethesda, Maryland today. How are you?
Good, very good. Thank you for having me, Paul.
Sure. Have you got any dogs yourself?
We do. My wife and I have had dogs for 50 years, always Labradors, and for the last few decades, we've had two of them. We found that two are much happier than just one. Um, and so uh, we love our dogs, and they hopefully love us. Um, and yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that you must have thought the same thing I did then, because you've been around dogs long enough. You're probably thinking, wait a minute, what if the roles were reversed?
Exactly. Yeah, I've often wondered what humans would be like in similar circumstances, which my book Kobo tries to set up the same circumstances. The owners, of course, are alien creatures, but
Mm.
with psychologies and mentalities very much like humans. Um, and what would we be like? Would we sleep 20 hours a day like our dogs? Would we get excited when the two times a day when we get a little bowl of kibble? Um,
Or when our masters come home?
yeah, yeah.
Well, fill
And
us in a little bit on the plot.
the plot starts with Kobo, who's a 14-year-old boy
Uh-huh.
living on the planet Pavan, which is occupied by the Grobs, which are very large reptilian type creatures um, who found a colony, an abandoned colony of humans on a distant planet several thousand years earlier, and took a bunch of them back to their own planet, where they domesticated them as mainly as pets, but in some cases as workers and slaves. Um, and so Kobo is the lead character, and he's owned by two loving Grobs, with the name for the aliens, um, in pampered circumstances. And um, Soon after the book opens, they acquire a female, Ra, who's about the same age. And over time, they know nothing about sex. They have no language. The main point is they have no language, and they have no culture, and they have no human community. So um, they don't know anything. They don't know
Yeah.
about that people die. They don't know about sex. They know nothing, basically. Um, but eventually, by trial and error, they have a child who, after a year or so, the grobs sell, like we sell our puppies.
Right, right, right.
Um, and that disturbs the humans greatly. But then they get over it, and they have a second daughter, Na. Um, and after 3 years, Na gets sold, and that precipitates rage in Kobo, who attacks the male owner, and he gets sent off to another planet in the same system to work as a slave in their mines. Um, and eventually, Ra runs away and lives in the woods for several years, and finally she gets caught and sent off to the same planet, and where they meet a group of, or Kobo finds a group of humans who've escaped from the Grobs and are living in hiding on Loma. And so the story continues on as to will Kobo ever find Ra and what happens. I won't give away the ending, but
Of course not.
anyway, that's the basic plot.
It sort of sounds like a cautionary tale in some ways for those of us who have pets that, be careful. You don't know what your pets may be thinking or. And I love the way you open the book, how Kobo is, acting like a pet, having a dream and the way that his owner talks to him. That must have been fun just trying to come up with that kind of role reversal thing.
Yes, and I was curious and wanted to explore what psychological effects on humans living in such circumstances would be,
Yeah.
um, and whether and how they might be different from our own pets in those circumstances. Would they be different at all? I'm not sure. Um, I do think humans have a capacity for language that our dogs and cats do not, and so I think that capacity would reveal itself in a yearning for communication. But I don't know. I'd like to talk to some uh, child development psychologist or anthropologist further on that subject.
Well,
Anyway,
how hard was it to convince a publisher to take this on, that it was worth publishing? And what kind of reaction did you get?
well, I didn't convince anybody. I wrote the first book. I copyrighted it a number of years ago, but then I copyrighted the sequel, Kobo's Children, which has recently been published. Um, and I also I copied the sequel, and then I got a call from Dorrance Publishing Company saying we'd like to publish your book.
Hmm.
It's kind of a subsidized. It's not completely self-publishing, but it's a
Yeah.
subsidized publishing. Had to pay a fairly modest fee,
Mhm.
and so they published it. And then another company contacted me, Atticus Publishing, wanting to publish my sequel. And that's just recently come out in the last month or so, Kobo's Children.
Right. What inspired you
Anyway,
to do the whole series anyway? What inspired the story to begin with? I know you're a big fan of speculative science fiction and that kind of thing. Were there certain writers that inspired you, and what brought that particular story into mind?
the only thing that brought it into mind is having pets and wondering from
Yeah.
time to time what we would be like. So it wasn't inspired by any particular other piece of writing, although I was in my earlier youth much more of a science fiction fan, but I still am. Um, so it just seemed to me to be an interesting story.
Mhm.
And once I started the story kind of follows it, follows itself along.
Yeah, I found
Uh,
that to be the case sometimes when you're writing fiction. The story just starts to kind of write itself. But
yeah.
this one, it's a simple concept. What if people were the pets? But it sounds to me like a short story. How did you manage to flesh it out into this epic tale of science fiction and fantasy?
I don't know. It just kind of wrote itself. You know, what would happen? What if they attacked their owners and got sent off, and then what if they met another community of humans? So the story kind of wrote itself, in my
Yeah.
view.
What do you hope readers get out of this?
What do I hope they get out of it? The same reflections that I have about what are humans? What makes us distinctly human? Um, and there are a lot of other concepts in it. Um, in my sequel, Kobo's Children, that has just come out, I explore more the subject of breeding humans. We bred our dogs for 10,000 years, and have a whole variety of different breeds. What if humans were bred like that? And that comes out more in my second book, Kobo's Children, where uh, we come across dogs that have been humans that have been bred to be racing humans,
Oh,
some to be circus performers. One of my main characters in the second book is kind of a noble savage character, Azu, who was raised with a small community of other humans to be hunted by grobs for sport, and so he lives on this uh, island where they hunt humans, and he's one of the main. They call him the Grob Killer because he's killed a number of the Grobs. Anyway, um, but then you have lap humans who are 2 feet tall, and you have
okay.
uh, all
That's
sorts of
great.
other.
That's awesome. That's so fun. Tell us about your background. Well, first of all, I want to know about your writing process. Do you write every day?
No, I'm a very undisciplined writer. One of my favorite authors is 19th century Anthony Trollope, who worked in a bank, but he got up every morning and wrote for 3 hours, and he had a certain number of words. I'm not that way at all. I just write when I get inspired.
So,
I had a busy legal career,
yeah.
and so I've done a lot of writing. I've written a number of screenplays and short stories, and another novel about Henry VII.
Really?
Um,
Have you done anything with those?
I haven't. I'm waiting for Scribner's and or Simon and Schuster to call me up and say we want to.
Go
I
to
need to.
Amazon. Get
Yeah,
self-publishing, man. That's the key. Self-publishing. That's how I did my
self-publishing.
book was self-publishing. And I got over this. I'm taking the word just out of my vocabulary, as in it's just a self-published book. It's a book. Publish it.
Yeah.
Pub-
Well, maybe I will.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you've got a lot of interesting background stories. I mean, certainly out of all the things you've done, you've been a lawyer, a pet lover, of course, a teacher. You've appeared before argued before the Supreme Court. Surely there are some stories in there that you could develop into at least short stories or a collection of same.
that's true. That's true. If I um, thought about it more, um, I'm a history buff, and most of my reading is history.
Hmm.
So, and much of my writings have been inspired by what I've read historically. For instance, I've written a screenplay about the beginning of the American Revolution, which was inspired by a wonderful book called Paul Revere's Ride.
Hmm.
And as I read that book and the ordeal that the British soldiers went through, I said, "This has got to be a novel." Or a screenplay. So I wrote a screenplay about that. Likewise, I've written a television series about Lise Meitner, a famous Austrian physicist who was a friend and colleague of Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr and
Hmm.
James Planck. Um, so it's been mainly inspired by things I've read.
Well, don't keep them there at your home in Bethesda. Get them out there and let us read about them too. Uh,
Okay.
okay,
What
argue
what book did you write?
which what? Oh,
Or,
it's called I Never Heard of Me Either. It's about my search for stardom in TV that didn't quite turn out the way I thought it would, but I learned a lot of lessons along the way and found success in other ways. So it's I never
my
heard.
search. Okay, I'll have to get it on Amazon.
Oh, please do. I never heard of me either. I think you like it. Now, you argued before the Supreme Court. How intimidating was that?
At first, it was very intimidating. I was lucky enough to get a job at fairly young age in my early 30s in the office of the Solicitor General in the Department of Justice, which represents the United States in the Supreme Court. So the second time I ever opened my mouth in a courtroom was before 9 justices of the Supreme Court,
Good
and
grief.
I was very nervous. But you're nervous, or at least I was nervous for the first 5 minutes, and then they start asking questions, and you get into this
Hmm.
conversation and debate. And So it was an exhilarating experience.
I
The
bet.
Supreme Court is a very active. I've argued before lots of appellate courts, but the Supreme Court is the most active of any because they've got nine, all very smart people asking a lot of hard questions.
Yeah, and it's not just like a regular, it's not like a trial. It's you're just being grilled, kind of like almost
Right.
like a subcommittee.
Exactly.
Oh man, that would be something. Well, I'm sure there's going to be some stories to come out of that, and I really hope you do that. Um,
Okay.
I thought that would be fantastic. Well, listen, the book is called Kobo, and its sequel is Kobo's Children, and that has already come out.
Yes, it came out a month or so ago.
Great, and they're
And
available on Amazon.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kindle. Um,
Well, outstanding.
so
What's been a reaction of readers so far? Have you gotten any reaction?
um, I, I've gotten 7 reviews on Amazon. They're all 5 stars, and some of them are very glowing.
Well,
Um,
folks, got
but
to Check it out then. Let's get
Yeah.
it. Kobo and Kobo's Children. It's an amazing tale of role reversal, but even more than that. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Amazon, Barnes& Noble, wherever you get books. Richard, thanks again for joining us. It's great talking with you.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And thank you, folks, for spending a few minutes with us on the Global Book Network. I'm Paul Ryden. We'll see you next time.